Hello everybody and welcome back to LMM. And if you're enjoying what you're seeing on the channel at the moment, how about giving this video a like and maybe subscribing to the channel to help us grow, and perhaps even check out our Patreon. Today I'm here at the Vale of Rheidol Railway as part of the invited press for the opening of this brand new museum. I'm going to be part of the first people to be able to go and have a look inside it. So let's go mingle.
Now, I've been lucky enough to have been invited to several events like this now, but this by far was the most prestigious. And as I sat there drinking my orange juice, taking in the new building, I was aware that I felt very much out of place. I mean, I haven't been anywhere before where they actually had music being played live.
Do you ever have the distinct feeling that you're not meant to be somewhere?
I feel like we're not fancy enough.
Now, you might be wondering why I hadn't already gone for a wander around the museum, and that was because it wasn't actually officially open yet. We were all now waiting for the speeches to begin and the official opening of the museum to happen. And whilst we waited, I had a good catch up with some of my friends from other railways. Before long though, the speeches started where some key issues were addressed.
Toilets on the platform, very nice toilets, all-in toilets. Make sure you go, even if you don't need to go to the toilets, they're fantastic.
Make sure you go to the right one as well.
We're a double act today. Sorry, my name is Joe Williams. I'm the General Manager Designate for the Brecon Mountain Railway, and the Brecon Mountain Railway does feature very closely with the Vale of Rheidol Railway.
And then some trivia.
How many blocks? Because as an initiation to the Vale of Rheidol Railway partnership with the Cameraman, she asked me to count all the blocks. No, that's serious. So can anybody, we can have a bit of an auction, you know, let's start at 50,000, 50,000, 50,000. Stefan, your hand is up there, isn't it, Stefan? 60, higher, 60,000, 60,000, 60,000, 60,000. Sarah in the back there, see your hand up there. Just want to spend your husband's money, yes, husband? Oh, lucky man, lucky man. Sarah? 75,000. Any advance on 75,000? 103, lower now, lower, you're on the wrong game. This is by a cash there are actually 79,806, and we have counted them before you all came in this morning. So if you've got any ideas about taking one as a memento, we've got a carpenter outside ready with his plane.
And following the laughter, there were some exciting insights to the future projects.
Another thing that Peter Hampton did is when London Bridge Station was being redeveloped in London, Peter acquired the Victorian pillars and ironwork from London Bridge Station, brought them up here, and our next project, which is phase 2 of the museum, is to have a new building here which will incorporate all the Victorian pillars and ironwork that Peter had rescued.
As well as letting us all know just how much work had gone into making this new museum.
Today is the culmination of 8 years of work to bring all these various facets together and to create a new station, a new carriage shed, and this unbelievably good building that we're stood in now.
Then it was time to cut the ribbon and officially open the new museum. And then, for the first time, the guests were allowed to explore the museum, seeing several items that had never been on public display before.
With the opening ceremony over and everybody in their glad rags going off elsewhere around the place, that leaves me to change back into my hoodie and introduce you to this new museum, which looks suspiciously like an engine shed. And that's because that's exactly what it was when it was opened in 1938 by the Great Western Railway, and it continued to house locomotives all the way up until the 60s, where the railway moved out and the narrow gauge railway bought in, and this became the base of operations for the Vale of Rheidol Railways and remained that way, housing locomotives and stock all the way up until their new workshops opened over there in 2012, which meant that this space was available for something a bit different. And that's exactly what this is, because this isn't just storage and a museum telling the story of the railways around here and of narrow gauge railways. This is a community space. This can be hired for your own functions to bring the community into the railway and make the railway part of the community again. And that's a really exciting thought, to have a space that is so adaptable. It's not just a shed, it's something that you can do things with and become more than just a shed and involve a railway. I just think that's really cool. But let's go and have a look at some of the stuff that's in it, because there's some really, really nice stuff here. Perhaps the single most important locomotive to be in this very building is the Duke Dog. Now, the Duke Dogs are a combination of two earlier classes that were put together, the Dukes and the Bulldogs, which became the Duke Dogs. This very locomotive was based here and in the days of steam operated out of this shed. So having it back here where it worked its original life is something very, very important. And on a personal note, I really like this engine because it's the one that keeps getting away. I never saw this when it was running, so this is as close as I can get. And being in here with it is very special. And they even, when it turned up, had one of the drivers who used to drive it, who still lives locally, come and pose with it outside the shed. And that is really special. Now, we've been given permission to climb up onto the Duke Dog to tell you a special story, and it's about this sign here. This thing was actually here and used in this very shed and might well have been used on this very engine. It was given to a chap who came to university here who bunked with the mother of the shed foreman, who, on discovery that he was a railway enthusiast, this was given to him as a souvenir to take away and something that he took home and treasured. When he sadly passed away, it passed on to his brother, who, when he heard that this was being turned into a museum and this, an engine that had once been here, was coming back here, he thought the most appropriate thing to do to keep the legacy alive of this little story was to donate it back here so it could be back on an engine that it would have been back on in the day. This has literally gone full circle, and I think that is just fantastic. It's a tiny little thing, but actually it might be my favourite thing about the entire collection. It's a proper boiler empty sign on an engine it would have been on, in a shed it would have been on. Here, literally here. One of the things that I was most excited to see was this, one of the oldest surviving narrow gauge locomotives in the country. And you might be going, well, Laurie, that doesn't look very narrow gauge. Yes, that's because this is 4-foot gauge. Yep, it's just a little bit less than standard, which means it is a narrow gauge locomotive. And this is Fire Queen. And I've always wanted to see it, so it being here is quite a thing for me, because it's just marvellous. Look how far the locomotive has come. One of the most exciting things in this whole museum is that it is housing part of Peter Rampton's collection, the infamous, the worst kept secret in preservation, the Collection X. And this is part of that. Now, this originally started life as two separate coaches, which then through the forces of magic came together and became one. This has not been seen in the public eye for 46 years. And to see it suddenly restored like this, with no less than 16 coats of paint, is absolutely incredible. And to see it in the flesh, something that's been hidden away and suddenly on view for everybody to see, it's genuinely quite spectacular. The museum houses plenty of rare locomotives. This one behind me is a Dick Kerr and one of only two left in the entire world. It was built way back in 1918 for the war effort and unusually is a petrol electric locomotive. And I'm told on good authority that it probably would be a runner if somebody was to turn the key. So you may be wondering what's up with this floor made up of all these bits of wood. Well, this is actually a great Western practice and was employed at places like Didcot. It's quite useful because if, say, you damage a bit of the floor by dropping a tool, you just remove that piece of wood, chuck it away, cut a new one and reinstall it. It's also quite good at absorbing water, oil or blood. They are hoping that the latter doesn't actually involve this shed, but this is actually a proper way of doing it. It's a heritage system. It also means that the rails here, if they need to move them to adapt to a new gauge, all you do is pull out a line of this, move your rail open and repack it. It's a really good modular way of doing a floor. That's it. It's a modular floor. Behind me is a Quille locomotive that was built in France and then worked in a colliery in Spain at a place called Sabero. Now, Mr. Rampton managed to buy everything from this colliery when it closed, or nearly everything, including 7 locomotives and the director's saloon that you can see attached behind this engine. And what I particularly like about this is displayed in pretty much the same condition, admittedly a bit cleaner, than as it came off the boat into this country. This is pretty much how this thing ended service, and to see it as it was is really, really cool. This isn't a shiny, polished example. This is a weathered, work-worn example of how a steam engine would have been towards the end of its useful life. And this hasn't been seen in the public domain for 50 years. These are real hidden gems that have been literally hidden away, and now in a museum for everybody to see. As stark contrast, we have this Wren. Now, this one was built in 1918 and is in full working condition. The Wrens were a typical contractor's locomotive. Think a forklift truck of the day, going everywhere and working at a variety of sites around the country. And this one is something you can come here and drive. In the summer, it makes its way up to Devil's Bridge and runs on the isolated bit of track there, where you can be let loose on the controls. And having done it, I can tell you, it's actually exceedingly good fun. This is Pendleton, a De Winton locomotive built in 1897. And as you can see, this is a vertical boiler engine, which means rather than having the boiler going like that, the boiler goes like that. So it's a different way of making a small shunting locomotive, which would generate steam quite quickly. And can you imagine being out in this, particularly in this part of the world where it is so often damp? No cab, just being out. It must have been as much as I love steam locomotives, absolutely miserable. But it's really cool having this in the museum to show just the different applications and the different designs of steam engines. One of my favourite things about the museum is when you get that comparison between something that is huge and something that is tiny, but both still working on the same gauge, which really shows you just how versatile the 2-foot was and the amount of uses that you could use with it, and just how silly big you could go. This is a garret, which means it has articulated bits. It has a power bogie at the front, which can pivot, the boiler in the middle, and a power bogie behind it, which also can pivot, meaning this exceptionally long locomotive can go around rather tight curves. This one is an NGG 13, and this is the newest arrival here at the railway as a working locomotive, and you can see it running during the summer on the heavier trains, which is a bit different to the traditional Vale of Rheidol locomotives. Margaret too is in ticket, and this one you can also see in the middle of summer. If it's not the Wren over there, this will be doing the driver experiences up at Devil's Bridge, and actually it's another engine that I've seen running and had to go at, and it is delightful. This thing was built way back in 1894, and things kind of changed a bit by the time this came around in 1927. But they are still basically the same machine underneath. This one's just basically, well, 2 of those and a big boiler slapped between them. But yeah, same basic thing. This engine here is particularly relevant to be part of the collection with the ongoing events of the acquisition of the Brecon Mountain Railway by the Vale of Rheidol Railway, because this was the mainstay of the Brecon Mountain Railway for quite some time and has racked up an incredible 125,000 miles going up and down before the railway extended, and this was superseded by the Baldwin. This is a Young, built in 1908, and it is typical of German design, and frankly I just like this. It's an absolutely hideous engine when you look at it, but everything kind of comes together and it works and is wonderful. I really like this. I want one of these. Possibly one of my favourite engines in the museum is this. This is a model of a 3-foot gauge locomotive which has been done on the 2-foot. And when I say it's a model, you go, oh, so it's a recent thing. No, this was made in 1903 for the children of the owner of the quarry. So they had their own personal locomotive to play with. Why wasn't I given my own personal locomotive to play on that was a scaled down model of a bigger thing? That's absolutely wonderful. This is a toy. That's what this is. It's just a toy. This one is the youngest of the Rheidol tanks and is a star of YouTube, because this is a locomotive that I hopped on when we did our Lemons Race the Car. I hopped on this and the other guys tried to get up to Devil's Bridge before this did, and we ended up losing some of the team, so there's a link up there if you want to watch that adventure for yourself. This one is number 9, but at the moment it carries its original number, which was that of a older locomotive, which this one kind of adopted the identity of during an accountant's rebuild. Yes, 1213 definitely was rebuilt into this one, which involved such components as the number plate. Yeah, it was an accountant's fiddle to get another engine. But I like this one because I've been on it.
And with my walk around of the museum complete, it was time to join the others on board the train for a trip up to Devil's Bridge, where a lunch had been prepared. For those who haven't visited, the railway starts off on the flat and level, crossing over the river and heading towards the foothills. And on board, I bumped into my buddy and fellow YouTuber Luke Ryan from the Talaclin. And soon, the railway started to climb, and the sound from the engine was amazing.
That's what real engines sound like.
With the little engine working hard on the railway that it's been at since 1923, we began to climb. And as we headed up into the mists and mizzle, the scenery became spectacular. I'd enjoyed flying the drone so much that I suddenly realised that I had insufficient battery to get to Devil's Bridge. In fact, I had to land pretty much immediately. And the problem was, as I came in for a landing, the drone lost signal, which activated the return to home mode. And that meant, as we pulled into Devil's Bridge, I didn't really know where my drone had ended up.
After a stunning run, we have arrived at the other end at Devil's Bridge. Now, you'll notice that I have in my hand the controller for my drone, and you'll notice that I do not have my drone, and that's because it's landed that way. I was told it was a 20-minute train trip, and it was. My drone, when it took off, had 20 minutes of flight time, and we miscalculated that by about 2 minutes. So, we're just waiting for permission to go collect it. But if you've enjoyed the footage of the drone, you'll know that the jeopardy is not real and I got it. And if you're thinking, what footage of the drone? Well, that means that we never got it back.
Having found the guard and been gifted a high-vis, I set off on an adventure to find my drone.
It is at this point worth pointing out that what I'm doing is fine. I've contacted the railway control via the guard, so the train is not going to move until I return. I have high-vis on. The railway control at the other end knows that I'm doing this, so no train is going to come up. So it's all above board. I'm not trespassing. The railway knows that I'm an idiot and has told me to go fix my mistake. I actually think walking the track bed is a much nicer way to appreciate the railway. Well, it's actually true, like you don't appreciate a railway unless you're on the cab, because if you're not at the cab, you can't look forward. And looking forward is where it's the most pretty. I mean, this is the most quintessentially narrow gauge I think I've ever walked along. So somewhere it reckons, absolutely perfect. There it is, landed without issue in the middle. Good landing. It's looking down, but good landing. Not gonna lie, that is definitely a relief. Right. Let's get it and get it home. So I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is I have recovered the drone, it's powered up, it's connected again, and it might even fly again. Hopefully it hasn't corrupted the video. That's my most important thing, that I'll get the video back. Bad news is we're missing the buffet lunch.
Our walk had taken us so long that we had to grab what was left of the food and get straight back on the train. Being able to dine on the return journey was delightful, and the rest of the trip happened without incident. We were especially pleased, though, to pass number 7 and relieved to know that my antics hadn't actually delayed the afternoon train.
Having returned from our misadventures up at Devil's Bridge, we returned for one last look at the museum because it really is an amazing space. I'm so excited to see what they're going to do. The most exciting thing about it is this collection is not permanent and the items within it are going to move around. Within summer, at least 2 of the engines will have moved out to be running services or to be up at Devil's Bridge. So other items will be bought in, and the plan is to cycle various items of the collection. Certain things are here on loan, certain things are here more permanently. So when you come and you visit again later, there may well be different items to see. And that's an exciting museum when things change and it's not always the same. And with that, that's the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and a massive great thank you to the Vale of Rheidol Railway for inviting us along to this. It has been a real honour, and I am very, very excited to see what happens with this and the new plans with the railway moving forward. And that, thank you all very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, how about clicking over there for the adventure where we race the train, or down there for some other video, I guess. On that, thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Ta-ra!